On December 20, the Quezon City Regional Trial Court Branch 221 will hand down the verdict of the trial of the decade, the 2009 Ampatuan massacre where 58 people died, 32 of whom were our fellow journalists. I am Lian Buan, this is Rappler Talk, and we have here the chairman of the National Union of Journalists of the Philippines, Sir Nonoy Espina, to talk about the case and what the decision will mean on the state of press freedom in an increasingly hostile environment for the media in the Duterte administration. Magandang hapon.
Magandang hapon din, Lian.
Sir, tomorrow is the 10th year anniversary.
Yeah.
What makes this year different para sa mga katulad yung nag-organize every year ng anniversary?
Well, for one, it's going to be 10 years and we still don't have a verdict. So, going by the dictum of justice delayed, justice denied, if 10 years is not a delay, I don't know what is. But having said that, it's also momentous because we do expect a verdict soon, as announced by the court. But also, you know, when the cases started, when the cases were being filed early on, the lawyers were actually, we were talking to the lawyers, we were discussing the possibility, what possibilities, and most of them agreed that the way the case was filed, it was going to take at least a decade before any convictions could be won, if convictions would be won. And it's, you know, it's eerie that they were so spot on with the prediction.
10 years.
Yeah, so 10 years. So, yun. And we really hope that it doesn't go beyond this because that would send a very, very bad signal insofar as impunity and press freedom and justice is concerned.
Sir, meron bang kakaibang kaba for this year? Kasi iba yung nagse-celebrate ka every year na hindi mo alam kung kailan yung verdict. Ngayon, alam mo, before December 20, bababa na yung decision. May kaba ba sa mga pamilya?
No, in fact, the families are really anticipating this. I mean, they've waited 10 long years. I don't think any one of us can imagine what they've been through, the agony, and hindi lang yun, the suffering, because really they didn't just lose loved ones. Most of them lost breadwinners. Most of them lost the economic base of their family's existence. So it wasn't just a tragedy, it was an economic displacement of such huge proportions for the families. In fact, during, if you remember at the site during the commemoration of the families, when the children were doing the skit, and it wasn't a skit really. They were actually telling their stories of how they lived for months without water, without electricity, because they couldn't pay the bills. So that's what this massacre has forced them to go through. So hopefully when this is over, and hopefully they do get recompense for what they lost and move on, so they can really move on with their lives.
Sir, no less than the Justice Secretary said he's confident na at least for the principal accused, just yung maging decision. But do you still to talk to the families and try to manage their expectation para hindi masyadong umasa, kumbaga? Kasi 101, sir, yung babasahan ng...
Ang ngayon, 101 for now. Yun na, well, they do realize that, in fact, some cases have been dropped na nga. So they do realize that there may be some who will be acquitted, but they also know who should be convicted. So I think their expectations are more grounded on that fact that they know exactly, for them, they know exactly who should be convicted.
Let's name them, the three brothers.
Well, the three brothers, Andal Ampatuan,
Junior.
Dato Unsay, Junior, Zaldi Ampatuan, and Sajid, who is out on bail.
And the mayor of Maguindanao town.
Yeah, he's the mayor of one of the towns. Well, he lost in his town, so he ran in his wife's town. So palitan lang yun. So, and well, we really don't know exactly what the outcome of either conviction or acquittal will be, but I can imagine it's going to be a pretty tense moment.
Yeah. Parang hinintay natin ng isang dekada. Ang moment na yun.
Yeah.
Sir, let's talk about its impact on journalism. The 32 journalists who died, almost all of them, if not all, were community journalists,
Yes.
di ba, sir? In the 10 years, nag-improve ba or nagbago ba yung state of community journalism in Mindanao or particularly sa Jensan, sa Coronadal, where these journalists were from?
I really can't judge the state of community media. Although I do come from community media background. But you see, it's so fluid. Well, in the aftermath, in the immediate aftermath of the massacre, I do remember we were holding a meeting with colleagues there. And imagine in that region, from Jensan up to Sultan Kudarat, they lost practically half of the media community.
Yeah.
That's a huge blow. And you could feel the terror. And they admitted they were scared. But sa ngayon, I think they've rebounded pretty well. And as far as they have a vibrant community media going on. In fact, because of the cropping up of all these small radio stations, news FM format, so it's a pretty vibrant scene naman. And whenever we go there are lots of requests for interviews. And wow, ang dami ng ganun.
Oo nga sir, nung nasa Maguindanao tayo ng weekend, hindi ka namin mahanap dahil laging meron kang ka-phone patch.
Yeah, exactly. Di ba? So,
Sir, dun sa 10 years, in general, nag-improve ba yung pagbibigay ng safety sa mga journalists, whether given by their own news organizations or just the government security in general in these places?
unfortunately, most of the safety training for journalists is still given by non-profits like NUJP. It's part of our. It's a core service of ours. Groups like CCJD, INSEE, and I know the big networks have provisions for safety, but this is insofar as physical safety, and I do know that one of the big networks has a stress and trauma program going on, which is, I think, important. But this doesn't reach the communities, especially stress and trauma, which is just a newly recognized risk that most journalists do not realize exists yet. So yun, pahirapan pa rin. And I do know there are some initiatives by the community press to engage state security forces for training, but most of that is based on combat survival and the conditions, which are totally different from the media experience usually. So it takes a specialized training talaga for media, and fortunately not too many groups.
So there is a need.
There is a huge gap to be filled there. Yeah.
Sir, yung threats to journalists, hindi naman lang yan nanggagaling sa mga kaaway. It also comes from the conditions of our journalism profession, like low pay,
Unfortunately, yes.
no regularization. Has it improved? Has it changed over the last 10 years?
I think it's worsened.
It's worsened.
Well, just aside, community media aside, even the mainstream, especially broadcast, there are more and more contractual workers, and it's there's no security of tenure, no benefits. That's harsh. In some ways, meron namang happy dun because they can do as much work as they want and get paid more, but then there's also the payback in terms of health and so yeah. And in the community press, it's there's been no improvement at all in the scales of. Because because these are small companies mostly who cannot really afford. But then there's also the fact that because there's no regulation on who can own media or not. No? So anyone can basically put up a radio station or put up a newspaper. And the levels of ethics in ownership is really spotty. And there are outfits that don't even pay wages. They'll tell you to solicit advertising and you earn from the commissions. So there's a lot of stuff going on that isn't really conducive to ethical and good journalism, and that's a shame.
So it's a continuing challenge.
It is because it's all tied up in because before the conversation always veered towards individual accountability for ethics, but there has been no sustained and in-depth dialogue about the responsibility of ownership, the ethics of ownership, because ethics cannot be legislated. Only the owners, only the one who gives you the paycheck can actually enforce that. But if the one who pays you doesn't abide by ethics, then all goes down the drain.
So ano sa tingin niyo yung gap ng journalism profession na na-highlight nung massacre that still needs to be urgently addressed?
Well, that one where I think in terms of journalism, they were all actually community press, so the problems with the community press were the same problems they were facing. And they were there to cover the filing of candidacy. It was actually a routine coverage. No? And yun nga, to die during a routine coverage.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been saying. No? Although it remains the single deadliest attack on the press, the massacre wasn't so much an attack on the press as it was an attack on our democratic processes. And I think that's even worse. Like, you massacre people to stop a rival from running. Yeah. That's you trample on the whole democratic process, on our concept of nation and the process and rule of law. So that was a huge blow, really.
Sir, balik ako dun sa how the family coped in the 10 years. Ano po yung pinakamahirap na point ng trial na nakita niyong pinagdaanan nila?
Well, there were points. Sorry. At the start, well, the beginning was hard. Where there was a point when Zaldi almost turned state witness for the electoral fraud case against Gloria Arroyo.
Yeah.
And that really hurt them bad. But these families, yun nga, I haven't seen braver people. They stood up to the challenge, they denounced it, they made noise. And then down the line, and a lot of them have been threatened, really threatened. Some of them have been visited at their homes by, people on motorcycles circling their homes. Some have been approached with bribes, monetary offers, but they're still there. They want to see justice. And one recent event that really pained them was when Zaldi Ampatuan was granted leave to attend his daughter's wedding. And they were not informed. Ngayon, para sa kanila, even that mere fact of informing, it was an utter lack of respect for them as the victims of a heinous crime.
Yeah, because the process should have been dapat ipapa-comment ng prosecution.
Exactly, yeah. So, yun, medyo nasaktan sila dun. And when Sajid was granted bail, of course, they could not understand how a principal suspect could have been proven to be at the meeting where the massacre was supposedly planned, but have no participation in the planning. When in fact, at the very least, I think he was acting governor at the time. As a government official, he failed to prevent the commission of a crime.
If I remember it correctly, ang kanyang alibi ay he was not on speaking terms daw with his brother and his father dahil nag-aaway sa politika, so he couldn't have been
he
in
couldn't
those
have been
meetings.
in this meeting. No, he was at the meeting. Even the judge acknowledged that. But the finding was, he was there, but he didn't participate. So that even that kind of boggled my mind, But that's it. It's there. So sayang.
Pero sir, ibang klase din yung tibay ng loob ng mga pamilya to have talked through 10 years.
Yes.
At nabanggit ng isa sa akin, parang may almost up to 50 million yung mga offers sa kanila na kailangan lang tanggihan.
Yeah. And in fact, to be honest, I would not. We were upfront with them and said, look, if they offer and you took the money, we will not begrudge you that. Because they've taken a whole lot from you. In fact, they've taken your whole lives, basically. Your economic bedrock. So if they offer you 50 million, take it. Why not? No? It's not going to change the case because it's already being tried.
Yeah.
It's people of the Philippines. So, but wala, they refused. So, I mean, you have to give it to them talaga, the courage and the integrity of these people. I mean, it's never been easy for them. In fact, yun nga yung regret namin na, we did find funds because there was no way we could support their daily needs. Pero at least we managed to find a source of funds for putting the children to school. Yeah. And in fact, that program has graduated quite a number of the children who are now supporting their families. But unfortunately, the funds ran out. And it was last year, and our partners informed us that they could no longer fund the program. And we had to tell them that it was very painful.
Yeah.
It was painful for us, but I can imagine how much more painful it was for them. So, sayang ba? We still have some kids that, you've met them 10 years old, and they were just infants when their parents were killed. And So we're still trying to look for a replenishment of that, so we can jumpstart it again. And so hopefully we can. Hopefully we can find it.
Sir, up to last year, before the funds ran out, lahat ng kids ay napag-aral?
Yeah. It wasn't, but yeah, it wasn't really it wasn't much of a scholarship, but it ensured that they got to school, that they had supplies, and they had uniforms. So, which otherwise, a lot of the kids actually had to quit school in the aftermath because hindi na kaya. But then, fortunately, the funds came in. So,
Pero naghahanap ng...
naghahanap pa rin kami. Naghahanap kami ngayon. Kaso, it's not such a good time for... I'm not sure exactly how the cycles of the donations work, but we're not stopping. We'll continue looking for funds for that.
I'll touch on it briefly lang, sir.
Sure.
Yung sulat ng Malacanang asking NUJP and CMFR to give them a breakdown of lahat daw ng donation nyo for the Ampatuan massacre.
I do not recall that we're accountable to Malacanang. We are accountable to the families. In fact, when that demand was made, the families came out with a statement.
Yeah.
And they said there's no need. In fact, I have a copy of that statement. But essentially what they were saying is there is no need for us to ask NUJP where it went because we have the living proof of where it went. So, I mean, it's something that really humbles me, like I said. So I tend to get emotional about that.
Okay lang.
But I'm really grateful to the families. And, it's very humbling that through all these years, they've accepted us. They've allowed us to walk with them in this struggle. It's not easy. Not easy for us, but it's harder for them, of course. So yun, parang... And yun nga, yung sabi ko, it wasn't the job. Well, we were kidding around and we said, sige, walang iwanan. I mean, what movie was that from? Yung walang iwanan, di ba? But it stuck and they've stood by that. And I'm really, really thankful that they haven't turned us away or turned away from us. But it's something that I'll always cherish. Yun ang doon din kami humuhugot ng lakas to continue this.
Sir, yung letter ba yun, do you consider it as a veiled attack on the press again?
I really don't know. I mean, siguro it was an attack on us, but it doesn't bother me. I'm more bothered by the effect of this, the wholesale accusations on the press on our colleagues. It does tend to have a chilling effect whether we admit it or not. We can always say, hindi, matibay yung media, kaya to, pero you hear that talk, like in some newsrooms there's self-censorship, there's a tendency to kind of go slow on the critical stories and all that. And that's sad, because this is the time when we have to step up actually and really be critical, because there's so much to be critical of. This is a time when we have to step up because our mandate is to serve the people's right to know. And there's a lot that's being kept from the people. And it's our job to dig it up, dig all that up and tell them this is what's happening. And when we hold back on that, it's the people that suffer ultimately, because that's what I always say, press freedom does not belong to us. Not me, not you, not our colleagues. It belongs to the people. It's a freedom that we wield in their service, to serve their right to know. And if that goes, then, like they say, only an informed people is armed with the knowledge to free themselves. So yun, and I truly believe that. So I always tell people whenever I'm asked to interview in the provinces and all that, I always tell them, look, this is your freedom. Press freedom is yours. So it's not our job alone to defend it. It's also yours. Unfortunately, and I'll be real honest here. I think media have lost a lot of, well, the credibility is down. People don't trust us that much anymore. Plus the fact that we have a head of state who actually pummels our
Yeah.
credibility and calls us prostitutes and kind of justifies that if you're corrupt, you deserve to die. So, it kind of worsens the situation. And sometimes it's hard when people realize, oh, you're a journalist? No. So it's also important for us to regain that goodwill, to rebuild those bridges. Because I do believe that in large part, media have also distanced themselves from their audiences. It's like we're up here and they're down there and we talk down to them. That's not good. That's not good.
So yung sinasabi niyong blow to our credibility, did you feel that also affected yung pag-raise ng awareness again do sa Ampatuan Massacre, pag-raise ng funds for the families? Naka-apekto ba yun na kumonte yung kaya nating i-engage because our credibilities were suffering this blow?
No, as far as the massacre was concerned, no. In fact, I think the one at fault there is basically tayo din. We get caught up in the news cycle and we shunt that story aside. We don't keep as close tabs as we should. So of course, when it's not in the headlines, people also tend to overlook that. But whenever it comes back and people actually do not forget. They haven't forgotten. Like even back home when I talk to people and they say, yeah, we remember that. In fact, one of the most interesting questions is, where were you when it happened? Everyone remembers that. It's like when JFK was shot, where were you? So it's there. Siguro, we just have to work harder on, I think the work that we have to do is to explain the implications of that massacre and what impact did it have on not just press freedom, but on democracy and what are the reasons that lead to such incidents? Because the reasons are basically systemic. Yeah. It's our governance, the system of governance. So it's an educational thing actually that we should learn from.
Sir, we were in Maguindanao last weekend and I remember si Nicole, 20 years old si Nicole. Yung opening niya sa skit niya, nakakalimot na ata kayo.
Yes.
And that is true.
Yeah.
Not only that people forgot, but media also forgot.
That was a rebuke to us actually, and I accept that. Well, I mean, I'm not. We're not taking credit for anything.
Yeah.
We try to drumbeat the commemoration every year, but when you're up against a news cycle that's sometimes very brutal and you have to compete for space, you don't always win. Most of the work actually has to take place outside the newsrooms. Yung tayo na mismo on our own individual capacities and media organizations or even outfits, but outside the newsroom, we have to engage people. And well, I know you're going around, you have road shows and all that, engaging people, trying to explain how we work. And I think that's what should be done more. Because it's only when people understand why we do what we do that they can appreciate what we do. Otherwise, we're just another voice in the box or another talking head on TV. So wala lang, there's a huge disconnect between. Sometimes I don't even think they look at us people anymore.
Sir, in the 10 years, leaders, heads of agencies have made pronouncements na tatapusin natin to, we're doing all I can to ensure. Did the words translate to action? Nakitaan nyo naman na there were some policy changes na nakatulong sa pag-expedite ng kaso?
Well, in the first place, the filing of the case was, as Nena Santos said, it was designed to fail, really. So that's why it's taken this long. But, I've always been worried about pronouncement by officials regarding a case that's in court. In fact, yun nga sinasabi, we shouldn't be predicting dates or, because it's up to the judge. It's with the judge. We also don't want the judge to be, to be influenced by any pronouncement by the executive, because that would also constitute a miscarriage of justice if, something goes wrong. So yun, kaya nga, we trust it to the courts now. It's there. And basically naman, I think Judge Solis Reyes has done a human's job. I mean, to handle a case this complex, 101, everyone submitting a petition, a motion, a pleading, and reconsideration, and sometimes I know some petitions have gone all the way up to the Supreme Court. Yeah, so it's not easy. And yun nga, well, we're here. So let's see what happens. And,
Sir, balikan ko lang ng konti yung sinabi mong the way the charges were filed at the start were really designed to fail. How so po?
Actually, originally, no, if I'm not mistaken, I think Nena Santos will bear me out on this also. If I'm not mistaken, I think the original charge was conspiracy. The sin of one is the sin of all, which would have been a disaster, really. You know? And yun nga, 197 suspects charged all at once. Lawyers we talked to said logical strategy should have been concentrate on certain number, let's say 30 of the most of the principal suspects, and then go for their conviction, and then from there go after the others.
After na lang.
Because there's no statute naman at that.
Yeah.
So yun. Pero so you have 197, and about half of that are still at large. So yun nga problema. After this, whether whatever the verdict is, then the judge will still have to try the others once they're arrested. So it's not over. It's far from over.
It's far from over.
It's far from over.
Sir, when the Duterte administration came in and he was the chief legal counsel was Salvador Panelo, who we know lawyered for the Ampatuans.
Yeah.
Did you worry? Did the families worry?
Yes, of course. To be honest, yes. But yun lang. Yun din. On the other hand, we also said, well, it's with the courts, and but of course we were also watching, like, would they do anything to influence? And tingin ko, if there was any attempt, I don't think it succeeded naman.
Did you see any alarming developments?
To be honest, wala naman.
Wala naman.
Wala naman. Except, of course, when he said that he was visited by, you know, so medyo, ano to? Pero okay na yun. No problem.
No problem. Sir, down to my last question. Nung last press conference ni Attorney Nena Santos, it was one of the private prosecutors. He said, if the principal accused are not convicted, press freedom is dead sa bansa natin. Do you agree, sir?
Well, to some extent, yes. Although press freedom is a tough animal to kill, we're still around naman. No? I think it's more like it's democracy that will suffer the most. Because if they're acquitted, then it will send a signal. Next election comes around, it's going to be bloody. I can imagine the implications of that on the electoral process, and that's more than press freedom. That's our whole. That's the linchpin of our democratic system: free elections. So if you say, no, they weren't guilty of the massacre, then my God, I can't imagine what future elections will look like. But having said that, I'm still confident. I'm really, really confident that they will be convicted.
Sir, I'll give you the opportunity to invite para sa mga events ng NUJP.
Yes, well, in line with the 10th anniversary tonight, we'll have a concert at Moe's Bar in Matalino. Yeah, right, Matalino. And it's actually a concert for justice, and it's intended to raise funds for the travel expenses of the media victims' families. So, to give them a chance to witness the promulgation. And
pwede bang walk-in doon, sir? Anybody can go?
yeah, anyone can go, but there are tickets.
Yeah.
There are tickets, and we're selling T-shirts also, and to still to raise funds. And tomorrow at Mayhem Garden, we'll have a community mural collaboration activity. We'll be painting. So you don't need to bring the brushes. The brushes will be there, and it's also an occasion to get together and renew ties and talk about the state of media in the country. And after that, we'll be marching to Mendiola to reiterate our demand for justice.
A lot of work to do.
Yeah,
Fight is not far from over.
No, it's not far from over, because even if we get justice for the 58 in the Ampatuan 58, we still have more than 100 colleagues to find justice for. So, and hopefully, wag na madagdagan. Nakakapagod.
Salamat, sir. That was Nonoy Espina, the chairman of the National Union of Journalists of the Philippines. This has been Lian Buan. Thank you for watching.
Thank you very much.